Welcome to Transforming with Drew, where we talk about everything on the TQIA spectrum. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Today, I am pleased to introduce you to our amazing guest, Ray, to the Transforming with Drew podcast, where we talk about all things TQIA. Hello, Ray, and how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing fantastic, booked and busy, but I'm really happy to be here.
That we greatly appreciate that. I know you do have a busy schedule. So would you like to introduce the audience to yourself, a little bit more about you?
Oh, sure thing. So, hi, everyone. My actual name is Gabriel, but I like to go by Ray. I use mostly they, he pronouns, emphasis on the they. And, I live in Brooklyn, New York. I'm 29 years old. I've been on hormones almost 7 years. I had a top surgery about 4 years ago. So I'm pretty further along than most trans people are on TikTok.
Well, that's kind of good because then it shows what people can see, a few years down the line if they kind of resonate with you. So I think that's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so would you like to tell everybody where you're from and how you like it over there?
Well, I'm originally from La Paz, Bolivia. I'm actually a Hispanic immigrant. I came to this country when I was less than a year old. So Spanish was definitely my first language, and I grew up in Forest Hills, Queens. It was a very interesting time. I'm also neurodiverse. I'm on the spectrum. I'm autistic. So I didn't really get to learn how to speak until I was 4 years old. I went through special ed for a bit, mostly because I didn't really speak English very well. I had some verbal developmental delays, but no, it's growing up has been very weird. I felt out of place in more ways than one that I just couldn't describe why I felt out of place. I was like, okay, I guess I'm a tomboy. And then people made assumptions about me as I was growing up through my teenage years. Oh, you don't seem interested in guys. Are you a lesbian? I was like, what does that even mean? They're like, oh, you like women? I was like, I guess. I mean, they're pretty. Sure, I'll go with that. I just rolled with it. I was just like, okay, if that's what that is, well, if we can put a name to that, makes it easier on me. But then when I transitioned around, after I graduated college, my sexuality really changed around. I thought I was straight. Then I was like, okay, no, I'm actually gay. No, I actually like both. And so I was bisexual for a bit. And then I found out what non-binary was. And I was like, okay, I actually like everyone.
There you go. I mean, that actually works. I actually know what it's like growing up on the autism spectrum disorder and learning a second language. My first language was actually German, and that they thought that was the reason why I wasn't speaking until later, but now we know why I wasn't speaking until later is because I'm on the spectrum. So I completely can relate to that and being put in a class that they shouldn't have put me in.
Yeah.
So you said you started transitioning around college time. Was that when you finally realized it was time to be authentically you, and how did you come to terms with that?
So back then, coming from a Hispanic family, we really didn't know what transgender was. So, and also wasn't really widely talked about as it is today. And so more and more people are coming out earlier and earlier, and there's so much more access than there was back in college. Because the first time I heard about trans people, and I didn't even know what they were talking about, was when I went to a queer student union at my college.
Mm-hmm.
And people were introducing themselves and everything. They were like, oh, my name is this, but in public, I want you to use my dead name, and these are my pronouns. And I was like, I didn't understand what they were talking about. I was like, okay. And then I met my friend, Logan, and they were pre-everything. But they're already going by their preferred name and he, him pronouns. I was like, and I didn't really think anything. I was just like, oh, I didn't know that was a gender neutral name, but okay. That's all I thought. It wasn't anything. Just I was like, oh, I was really open minded. I was like, oh, okay, I learned something new today, and I just kept rolling with it because I was just like, who am I to judge? So I didn't really find out till I lost my job after college, and I didn't get into the graduate school I wanted. All of that happened at the same day, and so I was depressed. And back then, the social media platform to be was that was all the rage was Tumblr. So I was doom scrolling on Tumblr, literally just because in my depression I was just like, okay, let me just distract myself. And I saw this big post that talked about trans people, and I don't know why it caught my eye, but I was reading through it. I was like, oh, that sounds like me. Let me do some more research. And then I was like, oh, this makes my entire life make so much more sense now. And then I was like, but how do I convince people that I'm a guy? Like, I sound like this. I have long hair. I don't look remotely androgynous. So, but then I found out about testosterone. I was like, wait, hold the phone. You can take testosterone. You can get your voice deeper.
Mhm.
You can get facial hair. Because I've wanted facial hair since I was a kid before it even made sense. They're like, but you can't grow that. I was like, what do you mean I can't grow that?
Yeah, no.
But yeah, I found out about that, and then I was like, "Oh, you have to get a therapist to refer you to an endo." That's like the first thing that everybody talked about. I was like, "Okay, so let me look for a therapist." So a lot of them were charging an arm and a leg because like they didn't take my insurance. It's like, "Oh, it's $140 for the first session, and then $110 after the follow." So I was like, "Oh my god, I don't have money like that. What?" And then I got back in contact with a friend Logan again after a couple of years. They were already when you're on T. When I called them, like they sounded so different. I was like, whoa. And they took me to a clinic where they got testosterone. It was an informed consent clinic, so they followed the informed consent model. It's like you know the risk, you sign your the paper, and then they give you your first prescription, and you know you go on your way. And so I was like, okay, cool. So he was part of this program called Health Outreach to Teens, which is from 13 to I think 24. And I just turned 22, so I couldn't get into that program. But I was able, but the upside was I was able to get on testosterone much faster because through that they had to like see a counselor. But the upside to that program was like everything was free.
Okay.
I had to pay a little bit more, but like it was still like, you know, much more affordable than you know, seeing those therapists and get charging hundreds and thousands of dollars just so I could convince them, yes, I check all the boxes of gender dysphoria. So I sign up, I get my blood work done in July, and I was thinking I was going to get my T's prescription that day. And they were like, oh, our next earliest appointment to start T is in 3 months. And I was like, what? I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna have to take it. So I spent 3 months like vicariously living through YouTube videos of trans men starting T and just following their journeys.
That sounds pretty good, though. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that in certain states you have to go through like this crazy misconception of what they call gender dysphoria. It's like we have to hate yourself to transition. Not everybody
Mm.
hates themselves but wants to feel complete. So it's like a whole bunch of chaos. I mean, I did a informed consent too on my end, but I've also known for like 14 years. So it's kind of like I think I've waited long enough. I'm not going to do this. So as a non-binary transmasculine person who's also Spanish, what kind of challenges have you had to overcome?
Well, I had to explain to my parents, like, I'm still me. They thought I was killing their child, you know, and that's not like, you know, uncommon. It's like, oh my God, we're mourning the death of our child. I was like, but I'm still here. I'm just gonna look different. And you know, I was 22, so like they couldn't legally stop me. So there was no, oh, you can't do this, and that was the end of that. I was like, no, I'm using my life savings, and this is gonna get done. And I remember like a week or 2 weeks before I started T, I was like, so just so y'all know, I'm going to start hormones. I'm going to replacement therapy. And so changes are going to be happening. They're like, oh, we don't want you to go through those changes. So like, I'm not asking your permission. I'm just letting you know what's going to be happening.
Yeah, it's like I'm not asking you. This is happening.
Yeah, this is happening. Like I was living with it. I was like, no, this is actually happening. Because what they thought of, like they were like, oh, why can't you just be a lesbian? I was like, that's not the same thing. And then they were like, oh, why can't you just get a job, move out, and then start T? As if it's something you could just put off. I was
Yeah.
like, no, no, this has to happen now. I really can't go on. I don't see life happening for me past the age of 25. Like when I think about my future, all I saw was like a dark space, like it was a black hole. It's like I just did not see anything further. I was just like, okay. So I started T. The first thing that happened was my body odor changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I was like casually working out, like I didn't even know what I was doing at all. So I found myself recovering a little bit faster. I didn't have to wait as long between sets. Um, my facial hair started coming in a bit. Like I already had like long sideburns and like a wispy little mustache. I remember the first hairs that came out was like under my chin. That was like the first little facial hairs that I got. I remember 2 months on T, I already had to like shave that off. They were like, okay, you can dress up like that, but you have to shave that because they didn't want me to tell my uncle that I was like on hormones or anything. And my uncle didn't find out I was transitioning or on hormones until I was 8 months on T.
Oh wow.
He literally had no idea. And like, he only found out because he saw facial hair, not because my voice was already deeper. It already sounded like this. Like, it's probably because he saw me every weekend, and so the change was gradual for him. It's not like he didn't see me for 3 months. He came back and was like, "Whoa, who's that?"
Yeah, I did that to my family. They didn't see me for a while, and then they saw me.
Yeah, so like he came over every weekend for Sunday dinner. So it was like he didn't really notice anything because he saw me every week. So it was like very gradual change for him. He took me to one of his parties. I think I was like 3 months on team. My hair was cut short. It was like, oh, it looks good on you. It makes you look younger. Because when you see like my graduation photos, like I look older and now I look much younger, which I have no idea how that works, but it's funny how haircuts can really make a difference and make you look younger. So everybody was referring to, oh, is that your son? And they're like, oh, no, this is my niece. Like he was really confused. Like he was using she, her pronouns, but everybody else was like he, him, he, him, he, him. He was like confused, but he didn't think anything of it.
How was he when you found out?
He was probably my biggest supporter. Like I explained to him why I was doing it. I broke down, and then he was like, he turned out to be an advocate. He was definitely, which is more than what I could say for my biological parents.
Yeah, it's definitely a good that you had somebody like on your side, and that really helps too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like my brother was supposedly on my side, but he was like he's a doctor, so some of the things that came out of his mouth was like surprising. It was like, oh, you're gonna be an angry person on T, because like I was already a hothead like before T. I was like, okay, now that I'm 7 years on T, that was not the case.
Yeah, that's actually something I've noticed that some people are like, "Oh yeah, I'm on testosterone ride." I'm like, "No, I'm still pretty level-headed that I used to be. I mean, I get a slightly a bit more irritated on shot there, but that's about it. And then I still cry because a lot of people are like, I can't cry anymore, which is valid for them.
Oh no, sweetie, I can still
Oh,
cry for sure.
yes,
And when it cries, it's like extreme sadness.
yes, Ray, you're my people. We still cry.
We still cried. Like everybody's like, "Oh, I can't cry." I was like, "Well, if I'm really, really sad, it's still gonna come out."
I know I watched a sad movie and I'm like, whoa. Coughing a little bit. What would you mean? What would you say it means to you to be a non-binary transmasculine person in the world today?
The fact that I don't have to conform to gender roles, I can kind of just do my own thing. I like that because being non-binary, it's like there's no gender expectations because in my culture, it's like hyper machismo, hyper masculinity, toxic masculinity, and I don't subscribe to that. I was just like, no, I'm still gonna be me. If I want to be a soft person, I'm still gonna be soft. If I want to be masculine, that's gonna be on my terms. And healthy masculinity, I'm all for that. I don't have to be a mean person or like be nasty or anything like that to get what I want. You could still be assertive without being like, oh, I'm gonna beat you up or anything like that. I just don't. That I was like, I'm not here for any of that.
That's really good though, because a lot of people, unfortunately, in our community, do take on a hyper. How to explain it, like masculine persona, and it kind of comes off a little toxic. And it's like you don't have to be that. You can be a gentle person and still be a man, and be like really nice and still be a man. So I think that comes from a lot of the, I guess, the heteronormative community that we have that we're raised around. I'm trying to figure out a way to talk about it. So I originally found you on TikTok, and then I saw you were also on Instagram, and you're very open and you're very proud of who you are. What decided for you to be very open about being a non-binary trans masculine person?
I guess it's because, I originally went on social media. It's because like back then all I saw were white trans people. So it was like there's no Hispanic people on there. So I was like, okay, let me change that narrative now. Let me, because like I'm also an immigrant, so that also plays with my trans